Why does Bob Seawright need to see this Roger Mitchell clip? You're watching Just Press Record. This episode is so good. I got Bob to talk about why sports matter. We talked about why there are too few live shared experiences. That's part of why sports matters. We talked about his kids, his grandkids, him, how fandom develops across generations. That's a big reason why sport matters. And in the end, make sure you stick around a bit. We talk about Moneyball and why it's only one side of the coin. It's a really cool, nuanced point. Jack Forehand, let's roll some clips.
There are very few live shared experiences, which is part of what the clip talks about. And sports are one place where they can have it. And, a whole city gets charged up about a team and a sport.
I believe in community. I believe that sport is the only anecdote left for a lot of the wrongs in our society, whether it's kids being locked in a room on a screen, getting into a world of loneliness and digital lives, whereas sport takes them into an open-air field. It takes them into a dressing room where they understand what a team is, where they understand what sacrifice for a common objective is.
It's a ton of fun, right? I'm thinking of my oldest, who we were talking about, his older two boys. He has three boys, but his older two boys are 14 and 12, and they play pretty well. And I go to games every weekend, but we also watch games together. And my son, their dad, and I, and they all love to watch, and we love to watch together. And of course, they especially love it when my team is on and it loses, and they can give me grief.
This is an important part of family.
I love promotion and relegation.
Why? Why? I love this.
Accountability.
Okay.
One of the great frustrations with American sports is the idiot owner. Now, to be sure, owners in other countries are idiots, but there are consequences when there's promotion and relegation. There are consequences to being an idiot. There's a big miscomprehension about Moneyball. Moneyball is what Thomas Kuhn, the great philosopher of science, would have called normal science. But there's also extraordinary science where things make leaps and jump unintuitively, whether it's, I'm writing a better letter on this right now, where Picasso in 1907 changes the history of art by radically moving away from everything that had been done before. And those kinds of jumps are different than Moneyball. And that's because Moneyball works in a loser's game, but doesn't work in a winner's game. And art and science, for example, are winners' games. They succeed based on the quality of their best work, and the worst work doesn't matter.
You're watching Just Press Record right here on Cultish Creative YouTube. I'm Matt Zeigler. This is a special Oh Snap, Guess What I Saw episode where I invite a prior guest back just to show them a clip I knew I needed their perspective on. So we're going to play Which Bob Said It to start us off here. It's a lie that you can be anything you want. You can't. There aren't restrictions on you other than your own abilities and your own willingness to try. But if you're 5'5" and slow, you're not going to play in the NBA no matter how badly you want to, which makes me think of Catfish, $1 Million Man. Nobody can throw the ball like Catfish can. Used to work on Mr. Finley's farm, but the old man wouldn't pay, so he packed his glove and took his arm, and one day he just ran away. You got the job you're built to do, and that takes being honest about it. So sorry to all the Mr. Finleys out there. The Catfish has to go play. We doing good so far, Bob? You appreciate it?
I'm great. I love any Catfish Hunter reference I ever hear.
I knew you would. All right, number 2. Reality has no place in the mind of a sports fan, whether it be a professional sporting event or your child's soccer game. This is a spin, but I'm taking it there. Who killed Davey Moore? Why and what's the reason for? Not I, said the referee. Don't point your finger at me. I could have stopped it in the 8th and maybe kept him from his fate, but the crowd would have booed, I'm sure, at not getting their money's worth. It's too bad that he had to go, but there was a pressure on me too, you know? Fans are biased. What? Whoever said a thing like that, which reveals how easily we distort reality to protect our loyalties. Oh, the ways we construct narratives in sports that often ignore uncomfortable truths. Appreciate that reference too. That's a good one for you. All right, I got one more for you. Last one. Baseball umpires have one job: to describe reality accurately. If we're going to get better at anything, we need to be accountable. Everybody needs accountability, which can only take me to one place: Pistol shots ring out in the barroom night. Enter Patty Valentine from the upper hall. She sees the bartender in a pool of blood, cries out, "My God, they killed them all." Here comes the story of the hurricane. The man the authorities came to blame for something that he never done, put in a prison cell, but one time he could have been the champion of the world. What is accountability and accurate judgment? What is fairness? Confronting hard realities. The champion of the world is with me today, folks. Better letter writer, all-around wonderful human, Bob Seawright. Welcome back to Just Press Record.
Thank you, Matt. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're going to have some fun. You're going to guess by the end what's on the back of this card, because I have this Roger Mitchell clip that I just had to show you. First and foremost, though, how you doing? You got a new backdrop today. Is life good since last time you joined me on one of these?
I'm doing great.
How nice is California today versus, a million degrees and humid in northeastern Pennsylvania?
It is wonderful to be back in San Diego, even if just for a brief visit. As I said to you before, we're going to a wedding today, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. My blessings to the newly wedded couple in a few short hours. Well, I'm going to start just with this, too. Of those Bob Dylan songs that I hit, favorite of those three, or where are we coming down on some of these?
Probably Hurricane Carter.
You can't beat Hurricane, right? It's just one of those songs.
Any reference to Paterson, New Jersey is a good thing.
I'll take it. I'll take Paterson, New Jersey and Paterson Hood on a good day. So I've got this clip. It's from Roger Mitchell, and I really wanted to talk to you about this. You're going to see if you can guess why. Let's roll the clip, Jack forehand, and then me and Bob are going to get into this.
When people come to me and say, what should I buy in sport in Europe? I say to them, what's your investment thesis? If they say the one about championship promotion, I say, I'm not your guy. If they say, I believe in community, I believe that sport is the only anecdote left for a lot of the wrongs in our society, whether it's kids being locked in a room on a screen, getting into a world of loneliness and digital lives, whereas sport takes them into an open-air field. It takes them into a dressing room where they understand what a team is, where they understand what sacrifice for a common objective is. They learn the lessons of life. That's very positive, because participation is then the real key to fandom. Any other of these fan engagement techniques, I believe, are a bit transient. You'll get the kids for now, but the kids are so fickle now. They'll come in and out. But if you've played lacrosse, if you've played rugby, if you've played baseball even, you've got a chance of being a real fan. So, investment thesis. Plymouth Argyle, when he took it over, basket case of a club. I'll buy it for nothing. I'll just be patient. I'll do all my stuff. I'll get all the people in, and it'll be a community asset. I'll feel good about it. I'm a rich man already. I don't need the money.
All right. There's 1,000 layers of this, from what's your investment thesis to if you believe in community to participation is the real key to fandom. I'm just going to shut up for a second. What did you think when you heard this clip?
I thought it was a fascinating clip, and I agree with a lot of it. And my immediate reaction was thinking about Wrexham, right? They're now raising money or trying to raise money at a $475 million valuation, which is closer to Premier League value than championship value, but they're probably going to get it. And they probably should get it. And it'll be fascinating to watch, their saga, because the championship is a whole lot harder than anywhere they've been so far. Salaries are 3 times as much money on average. They need more players because the schedule is insane. And they want to keep winning. And of course, they're going to have to drop players to compete, and fans will have trouble with that. They won't necessarily think it's wrong, but who was the big hero of the first 2 seasons? Well, it was Paul Mullen, but I don't think he can play at this level consistently. So suddenly that's gonna change everything, and that's difficult for fans who are always torn between, yes, anything to win, but what about my favorite guy?
What about my favorite guy? Just curious, how much of a soccer football fan were you pre-Wrexham? Were you always a big fan of soccer?
I have been a soccer fan for a very long time, and not as old as I am. There was no soccer or football in my hometown as a kid, so it was not an option. This is back in the dark ages, of course. But when my youngest, my firstborn, my oldest, who's now 40, was 4, he started to play. And of course he still plays. And I was asked to coach because I'd done a lot of coaching in my life, although no soccer. And I took up learning about it, and I started reading books, and I started watching it. And in those days, the only football on television was Serie A in Italy on Sunday afternoon on PBS. But I started watching it, and I loved it. And I decided pretty quickly I needed a team in English. Well, my better half speaks Italian, but I do not. So I became a fan of a then not quite up and coming. It was returning coming, a powerful old team that had been down for a long time and was starting the road back with a new manager from Scotland. And I decided I liked their history. I liked that they played kids, and this upstart Manchester United team would be the lads I supported. And of course, now I look like the ultimate bandwagoner, but I was around. I was a fan before the Premier League, much less before Alec Ferguson's first championship.
We'll give you credit for that. That's a good arc. That's a good arc. And
of course, I fit
remember,
right in because I'm not from Manchester.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah, right. And you've taken your lumps these last few seasons, which I like.
Oh my goodness, it's been awful. My grandsons, who are enormous football and EPL fans, have been incessant in their mockery of me and my team.
Are they loyal to any one club, or are they in the
They're loyal
FIFA generation?
to who's winning right now.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting what these shifts are. And this is interesting too, because so you as a parent effectively discover the sport because your kid is playing. Then you both become fans. And now you're in the situation of the grandkids where they're aware of the sport at a whole different level.
Yep.
How do you, this whole cross-generational thing kind of breaks my brain, but it's part of why I want to talk to you about this. How do you even start to think about that?
Well, it's a ton of fun, right? I'm thinking of my oldest, who we were talking about, his older 2 boys. He has 3 boys, but his older 2 boys are 14 and 12. And they play pretty well. And I go to games every weekend, but we also watch games together. And my son, their dad, and I, and they all love to watch, and we love to watch together. And of course, they especially love it when my team is on and it loses, and they can give me grief.
This is an important part of family. All right,
fandom.
Family and fandom, and how they connect to each other. So let's just break apart some of the stuff that Roger's talking about in this clip, which Roger, Mitchell, Jason Buck, this episode, there's so much sport in this episode. That's still one of my personal favorites, just watching them geek out on it. The investment thesis. Let's just pack this by levels. Sport as an investment thesis. You already talked about Wrexham. You've got the background. Where's your brain go when you even think about a sports team as an investable asset?
Well, in our family, because we're weird like that, we have talked about if you were a multi-billionaire, What does every multi-billionaire do? Well, every multi-billionaire buys a sports team because they can, because they have the money to, and because it's the best status indicator available, because it shows you have money to burn. Uh, and and that's why I always laugh when people talk about valuations of pro teams, because there are more than enough billionaires to buy limited sports teams. And so, the Lakers at a $10 billion valuation this week, yeah, I'll buy it, because it, you know, uh, A, they don't care. The money doesn't matter. And B, no one has lost any money at it yet. About in a world of limited things in life that people can do together. And we were talking about this a couple of days ago, right? When I was a kid, there were 3 television stations, and when you went to school on Monday, you talked about the TV you'd see, and everybody watched, All in the Family or Cheers or whatever your show was, whatever era we're talking about, and everybody talked about it. But now, few of us are watching the same shows, and if we are watching the same shows, we're not watching it in the same order or at the same time. So there are very few live shared experiences, which is part of what the clip talks about. And sports are one place where they can have it. And, a whole city gets charged up about a team and a sport. I'm a big Padres fan still, and we were, the day we're taping this, the Padres beat the Dodgers in a wild one last night. It was just insane. But of course we watched.
Of course you watched. You have to watch. That becomes part of go deeper into this, the shared live experience, because I think there's a shared live experience around your beloved Padres. And there's also just the shared live experience of going to the kids' soccer match. That doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's that it's only being experienced live. What is that?
There's something special about it because the achievement or the despair, depending on what happens, is personal. And, that's why we yell at the referees and scream our heads off. And there are a few things in life where you can do that. And even at kids' games, you can make a fool of yourself pretty easily.
It's always easy to make a fool of yourself in public. That's part of the reality of these things.
Have you been talking to my wife?
No, but maybe I should start. I need a separate email thread or a chat with her just so
There
we
you
can
go.
back and forth. What about Roger's point about, and this especially stems across generations for you, about kids and screens and just being plugged into the world in a different way, where playing soccer on the field ain't Minecraft? What about that?
It's fantastic. It didn't resonate with me as much because my grandchildren have almost no screen time. They have really good parents who listened to their mother, and so they don't spend much time on screens. So I take the point, I appreciate it, I agree with it, but it's not one I have to worry about very much because, like the 2 grandsons I talked about are out in their cul-de-sac every day training for soccer.
I love it. And I'm also curious too, because so if your oldest is 40, and I wonder, because I feel like I see this in even the middle brother who's in my family, who's just over 40 years old. He's early 40s now, but same, like no screen time for their daughter. And I think there's a real awareness, the closer you grew up to being around social media, the internet, a phone in your hand for more of your developmental life, the more you start to go like, wait, I don't know if I want that for my kids. Do you think it feels like there's a bit more of a trend for this? It's not the dominant trend, but it feels like there's more of a swell for this. You see?
I hope so, and it helps that my better half was a school teacher, and she saw every day that the damage screens did to kids. So she was, our kids, screens weren't a big thing when our kids were little. It was video games, but our kids didn't play video games. And so they were always embarrassed when they were at somebody else's house because they couldn't play very well. Oh, well, I don't feel guilty.
Oh, well. And the reality was, as a handful of years older than your oldest, just knowing that, when the games kind of sucked, you could only play them for so long before you got bored or your buddy was like, hey, let's go outside or let's go get into some trouble, because it just wasn't built for that. All right. What about, and this is interesting because you're an actual fan of this too, the club promotion relegation model versus the franchise model. It's real. It means different things, not just for the teams, but for financing and whatever else, but it means different things for fandom. Do you think there's a better or a worse? What are the goods and bads as you weigh those out in your mind?
I love promotion and relegation.
Why? Why? I love this.
Accountability.
Okay.
One of the great frustrations with American sports is the idiot owner. Now, to be sure, owners in other countries are idiots, but there are consequences when there's promotion and relegation. There are consequences to being an idiot. And, I used to say a lot that in the trading world, there's no reason to get mad at an idiot. You just take the other side of the trade. But there's no other side of the trade when the Colorado Rockies are a truly horrible team that has made no effort to compete, much less to win, and the owner is still going to make a hefty profit.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. And that's just a moral wrong. So if there's promotion relegation, you can avoid that. And it makes the season so much more interesting. I really like the idea, as in soccer the world over, that you win the league and you win the championship. I love the playoffs. I'm going to watch Game 7 of the NBA Finals on Sunday night. It'll be great. But I love that in the EPL, the team that finishes first in the long grind of a season holds the trophy. I think that's the way it should be. And I get that if you're an owner, you love playoffs because that's a boatload of extra money. But at least with promotion and relegation, most teams are playing meaningful games down the stretch in ways that playoff setup is designed to allow. So I'm a big fan of it.
I think it's underappreciated by people who don't follow too. That last point you made, it ensures you don't have the throwaway trash games or the team that's just like, well, they're just going to suck this year and they're going to be a disaster and they'll try again next year. But then you just watch them wade through half or sometimes more of a season. Whereas most of the time with the EPL, like roughly any of the European soccer leagues, you have, a third of the team still with something to fight for right up till the last day, roughly.
And they're playing teams, right? So
Yeah.
even if you're Manchester United and you're going to have the worst season in 40 years, but you're safely above the relegation zone, but you're playing somebody for whom the game matters.
Yeah. Because then you're also competing for, and I think this is one of the other interesting parts. You're competing in that structure. So even what we would think of as like a mid-table team who's fighting against that relegation team or whatever else, they're also playing the coach, the managers. They're thinking about who will I attract, who will I lose in the next setup.
Yep.
Which also that changes who wants to be a part of that locker room. And I think that's really interesting too. It's a whole other meta layer of psychology going on here.
Yeah, building a team is a fascinating thing. There are plenty of examples of teams that applied addition by subtraction and it worked. Right? The talent level overall isn't as high, but it's a better team for some reason. And that's always fascinating to me, and especially when it's my team. But I'm fascinated by how teams are built and why. Whether it's the 2025 Manchester United team that's an island of misfit toys, or the 1999 treble-winning side that was just spectacular.
Yeah, it's also interesting too, and Manchester United being one of the teams that moved into public ownership quite literally, and then you start to go, are we picking teams on, I know this is a high-level joust, but it's just, are we picking teams on Instagram followers? Like, how are we signing these guys up? Is it just ticket and shirt sales, or do we actually have a core ideology here? How did you understand that for Manchester? How do you think about just that philosophy?
Well, Manchester United is an island of misfit toys in terms of the team itself. They have a bunch of good players who don't fit together, and then they changed managers midstream, and the new manager has a totally different approach to play and has players totally unfit to play it. So he's got to do a lot this offseason. But it's an island of misfit toys in terms of management too. There hasn't been, whatever else was true when Sir Alex was in charge, he was in charge. And he had a vision, and he had a way he wanted to build, and he didn't always get it right, but he always did it consistently to what he was trying to do. And since he has retired, there has been no singular vision. And the old joke about a camel is a horse by committee, and Manchester United, camel at best.
What does that mean for you as a fan? So obviously it means it's harder to get the grandkids to be fans of your club. But what does it mean when you're in that almost rudderless spot?
It's terribly frustrating. It would probably be more frustrating if I lived there, or if I lived in England. And, here in the States, it's always available. And, in our family, we talk about it a lot, and there are people I talk about it with, but I'm not surrounded by it, and baseball, which I love, is a regional game. I don't live in San Diego anymore. So, at 9:40 at night, when I go to MLTV.com, I'm alone in doing it, and there's no community. My wife loves to go to the games, but she does not stay up till 9:40 to watch the Padres with me. And the closest example here in the States is probably football. I live in Northern Virginia now, and the Commanders had their first good year in decades, and the whole city and the whole area was remarkably enlivened by that going on, and you were just surrounded by it all the time. So anyway, to get back to your question, because I'm not surrounded by it all the time, it's easier to deal with and easier to ignore. And I probably watch fewer games live and merely catch the highlights because they're crummy. I have 9 grandchildren. I have plenty of things to do.
All right, it's time to play the game. I want you to guess, why did you think I had to show you this Roger Mitchell clip? I'll reveal what I wrote down as my guess.
I really don't know. My guess is probably you were interested in what I was going to say about a cultural community relative to what Roger said and in general.
You're damn close, and especially the cultural community relative to just sort of you nailed it with the investment implications of it as well. So I wrote down cross-generational community, assets, vehicles, songs, and that they all matter.
They all matter.
They all matter. And you have to be able to think through them on these layers. And Albacora, Roger's organization, and we'll put a link to them in the notes too. This is Roger's big thing in his book, Sports Perfect Storm, which, have you read this book that he wrote?
No, I need to.
We need to get you a copy of this book. We're going to get you a copy of this book because it's actually thinking about how does this work at all these levels? How do we think about not ownership all the way down to the fans, and then serving them, and this word, how do we serve them as community assets and treat them as such?
And we didn't even talk about Moneyball, which is like my favorite topic.
Well, give me a minute on Moneyball.
Moneyball is for the past 25 years been the be all and end all in sports and in business. But there's a big miscomprehension about Moneyball. Moneyball is what Thomas Kuhn, the great philosopher of science, would have called normal science. But there's also extraordinary science where things make leaps and jump unintuitively, whether it's I'm writing a better letter on this right now, where Picasso in 1907 changes the history of art by radically moving away from everything that had been done before. And those kinds of jumps are different than Moneyball. And that's because Moneyball works in a loser's game, but doesn't work in a winner's game. And art and science, for example, are winners' games. They succeed based on the quality of their best work, and the worst work doesn't matter. But Moneyball is built to improve the weakest link. And there's actually been analytics work on soccer and demonstrated conclusively that soccer is in fact a loser's game, and owners who are always looking to buy the best player would be much better served by improving the quality of the lower end of their squad. But science is a winner's game, and we spend all this time trying to gatekeep and check people's credentials and get rid of bad science when none of that matters. All that matters is the best work wherever it comes from. So that's my 90 seconds on Moneyball.
The 90 seconds on that. I'm excited for this better letter. And just in hearing you say this now, this is also the reminder that I'm saying we need both, but I mean, we need to be aware of both, just like we
Absolutely.
need to be aware of both sides of the coin.
Absolutely.
And if you acknowledge both sides are there.
Well, American football is an example, right? Every position on the field benefits from Moneyball except quarterbacks. Because if you look at first round draft choice quarterbacks, historically about half of them hit, depending on how you define success. And what we know from where quarterbacks come from, Tom Brady always messes it up because he was a 6th round draft choice. But by and large, the best quarterbacks are almost all first round draft choices, but they're not always the first quarterback taken. And you have to make the big bet. You have to play the winner's game to try to get the quarterback, even though the rest of your roster is perfectly appropriately moneyballed, right? Trade down for more picks, increase your likelihood of hitting. Easy, standard moneyball stuff, but quarterbacks are different.
Well, here's to the quarterbacks being different. Here's to Bruno Fernandez still being with you and giving you a better season next year.
Talk about a high volatility player.
Oh, God. But when he's on, he's so fun to watch. When he's on, he's so good. Tell the people they want to find more. They want to follow you online. Where should they look you up these days, Bob?
The Better Letter on Substack, which I write intermittently. I'm on Twitter at @RPSeawright, and I answer my email, and my email is available in my Substack.
Get on that Substack. You want all the music, all the sports, all the other takes. Bob Seawright, thanks for coming back on Just Press Record.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Zeigler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.